The gaming industry is in turmoil right now as every big company is buying the small boys. Let's talk about it. Hello there, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Botox Media. Today, I wanted to do kind of a freeform discussion on the current acquisitions occurring within the gaming industry. I know most of my videos, I've been doing the 3DS videos and the Wii U videos, but this is a topic that's very interesting to me, and I want to talk about. And as a whole, I like following video game news, so I might want to start doing more videos like this on the channel. So let me know if you enjoy this kind of stuff. If you aren't aware, if you haven't been following the gaming industry, a ton of bigger companies have been acquiring smaller companies, and it's turning every company into this big mega corporation like Disney almost, and it's kind of scary. However, there obviously are positives to each one. So like, for example, if you don't know, of course, back in 2019, I believe, or I guess it finalized in 2020, Microsoft acquired Bethesda, or ZeniMax, of course, being Bethesda Game Studios, and then Bethesda, the entire publisher, and ZeniMax, that's, you know, Fallout, Elder Scrolls, Doom, Wolfenstein, all those, Dishonored. So that was a huge one. That was like, I think, $9 billion they acquired that for. As well as, I should say, Microsoft has also acquired a ton of little boys. You know, they got Double Fine, they got Playground. Sorry, the Forza guys are making Fable now. A ton of other ones. World's Edge. What's the In Exile, Obsidian. So Microsoft's been gobbling up a lot. Of course, the biggest one they've ever done, I think one of the biggest acquisitions in history, happened back in January. It's still not finalized, but it most likely will be finalized, was Activision. Microsoft has acquired Activision for, I believe, it was either 68 or 78 billion dollars, which is just ridiculous amounts of money. And that's just insane. And we've seen other companies start to do this more as well. Sony, of course, maybe not reacting to what Microsoft is doing, but they kind of have to when at a certain point. They bought Bungie earlier this year, or I don't know if that one was finalized. I don't think it's finalized yet. So they're doing Bungie, I think, for like $3 billion. I actually made a video on that when it happened. Last year, they acquired a bunch of more, you know, organic studios, as people like to call them. You know, they acquired Blue Point, which they've worked with very closely, Housemarque, studios that made sense that, you know, they'd already been working with. But then Bungie came out of left field. Then they acquired Haven, that new studio that Jade Raymond's working at. So they've definitely been dipping their toes into more just general, like, okay, we just want more talent kind of, you know, aspect. So there's Sony. Then we have EA recently, or I think last year, maybe a year or two ago, acquired Codemasters. Of course, the creators of Dirt, racing, you know, I mean, EA loves their racing games, right? So that one kind of makes sense. Take-Two was trying to get it. It was like this bidding war, and then EA won out at the end. I think that one was really expensive too. I can't remember the exact amount. So there's that. Of course, even going back to Sony, they bought Insomniac a couple years back. Recently, we had the announcement that Embracer has acquired a flurry of Square Enix's Western developers. So really just a trio, but Square Enix doesn't have that many Western developers. I think that actually might be all of them. So they bought Crystal Dynamics, of course, that's Tomb Raider. They bought Eidos Montreal, it's Deus Ex, and then they bought Square Enix Montreal. I'm not sure exactly what that is. I think they did like Hitman Go and Lara Croft Go. So pretty big deal. And then they, of course, acquired a lot of IP. We don't know the full list yet. The ones they mentioned were Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, Thief, Legacy of Kain. And then we have to assume, you know, like Gex is in there. You gotta assume Gex is in there, right? So that's a pretty big deal. They got that for a crisp $300 million. That's really underpriced. I made a video talking about that when the news broke, so go check out that for more in-depth discussion on specifically the Embracer Group deal. So that one's pretty crazy. And now we just have more rumors. I probably missed a couple acquisitions. Even like Nintendo was kind of getting in on it when they acquired Next Level Games finally last year. So acquisitions right now are the hot topic. It is the hot topic of the gaming industry. They are not good on a surface level. Obviously, like I said, in some cases they are a good thing. In the case of Activision, yes. If Microsoft stays true to their word and Call of Duty keeps coming to every platform, that is a net positive thing because Activision was in shambles. If you don't know all the controversies with them. Right now, it seems as though Ubisoft may be looking to sell. Of course, the Guillemot family owns a majority stake in that company, I believe. But it seems as though they're looking to sell, and that makes sense if you look at it critically, because I'm actually a pretty big Ubisoft fan. I like Ubisoft quite a bit. I like Far Cry, I like Assassin's Creed a little bit. Like Trials. I like their smaller games, and then Far Cry, of course. Tom Clancy usually is pretty good. Ubisoft has been in shambles. I know I just said that for Activision. Not even comparable. Ubisoft was in shambles in terms of PR controversy with, like, sexual harassment allegations, and then also in terms of games, they have been just releasing flop after flop recently. Valhalla was, I think, the best-selling Assassin's Creed, but then for some reason after that, they're like, okay, we're going to make a games-as-a-service Assassin's Creed. And then they have this game called Hyperscape, which is a battle royale. That got canceled. Then they were like, okay, we're going to do a Ghost Recon battle royale. I think that one already got canceled. Then they're like, okay, we're going to make this game called Tom Clancy's X-Defiant. It's just COD, free-to-play COD. Then they're doing this new game called Project Q, and then they did this whole Ubisoft Quartz thing with NFTs, and Ubisoft is not in a good place. 5 years ago, it felt like they had focus. Now it feels like they have no idea what they're doing. So Ubisoft being sold off, honestly, kind of makes sense. I think, here's the thing. We're running out of, like, big companies to be acquired. Obviously, yeah, there's always, like, like IO Interactive, there's these smaller devs, and smaller publishers that could be acquired. Indie devs, I mean, like, I wouldn't be surprised to see someone scoop up, like, Way Forward, or I mentioned Play Dead. Those make sense. But in terms of, like, the big boys, there are two right now that I think everybody's talking about, and that is Ubisoft and the remainder of Square Enix. And I do think both of them are going to be acquired probably within the next 12 months. Now, I'm not, I'm not an industry analyst. I just like talking about it. I think I'm pretty well informed for the most part on these topics. Ubisoft for every reason I just said, but then also, like, think about it. They are in such a bad place right now. Their games are not doing well. Why not? If I was, Yves Guillemot, I would just be like, okay, let's sell right now before it gets worse. They said they sold their Western divisions to fund their NFT projects, or not NFT. That's completely wrong. They sold it to do more investments in AI and blockchain, and then I think, in that sphere is NFTs, right? So weird stuff. Not a fan. They're not in a good place. So why, if I was them, I'd be like, okay, maybe we should sell now before it gets even worse. They just announced that Prince of Persia remake is years off still. It had to switch developers. That game was supposed to come out in January of 2021, and it's just a remake of Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. Like, I know that game has some cultural relevance, and people like that game a lot. Not that big of a deal, guys. Come on. Let's just get that out. I mean, hey, it's a good thing they delayed it until hopefully it's good when it comes out. So, yes, I do think Ubisoft is going to be sold. However, everybody's saying that Microsoft's going to buy them. I don't think so. If I were to make a prediction, I guess that's kind of what we're doing in this video, is just kind of predicting who's getting sold off to whom. I would assume the most likely one for Ubisoft. People are saying Microsoft. I think EA might be the one to buy them. EA is pretty straightforwardly said they're not looking to sell themselves. EA is way too big. People, once again, I'm not the most familiarized with the actual worth of each company individually. EA is worth 10 times the amount of Ubisoft, which is funny because everybody, like, kind of, craps on EA for just being sports. Bro, they're sports. I think they just lost the FIFA license, which will probably be a hit to them, but as long as they can keep Madden and, Need for Speed is huge, obviously. Then, hopefully they're on the right track with, this Dead Space remake and Mass Effect 4 and a Dragon Age 4 if that ever comes out. So I think the most likely one to acquire Ubisoft would be EA, but it could also be some other random company. I don't know exactly how it works with, like, different countries acquiring different studios. I know with Japan it's a lot stricter, because there's some, like, Japanese law that kind of, like, prohibits it a little bit or something like that. Once again, not an expert. I don't know if a company like Tencent could easily come in and swoop up Ubisoft, or even like Epic or something, maybe. Maybe not one you're really thinking of, or maybe just, like, I wasn't expecting Embracer to buy Tomb Raider, and that happened. So Ubisoft could be sold to anyone. I do not think it'll be Microsoft or Sony, though. And that if Microsoft or Sony bought them, that would be a negative thing for everybody, because Ubisoft has really important IP. I don't want to see them sold off to a console publisher or console, like, manufacturer. I don't want to see them sold off to Sony, Microsoft, or Nintendo. That'd be a bad thing. They make way too many games that appeal to a way too broad of an audience. That was kind of the issue with Microsoft buying Activision. On the one hand, I'm glad that, Tencent or some other Chinese company didn't buy Activision. That's good. If Microsoft ends up making Call of Duty exclusive to Xbox, that's messed up. That's messed up. Unless you could make Grand Theft Auto exclusive before you make Call of Duty exclusive, and it ain't right. It ain't right. Too many people play it. If you take that away from, I guess really just PlayStation, like, that ain't right. You're gonna be the villain, Microsoft, if you do that. I am rambling about Activision though and Call of Duty. Let's talk about Square Enix and what I think is gonna happen with them. I did touch on this a little bit in my video talking about the Embracer buyout. I think the writing's on the wall. I think Sony is going to buy Square Enix. I think here's the thing. I've seen some differing opinions on this, and I'm not sure exactly where I stand. On the one hand, them selling their Western stuff that isn't performing very well makes sense. It makes sense for Square Enix to do that and just get it out of the way. They don't want to be tethered to it. They don't want to own these studios that are underperforming. They lost $200 million on Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy. They just want to be done. So on the one hand, Sony might see that and be like, okay, now we can get this for cheaper. And it'll be an easier deal. We just want the Japanese stuff. We want, we want Final Fantasy. We want Dragon Quest, that kind of thing. But on the other hand, I know Sony's buying power isn't that much, but when you're a company like Sony, you can borrow as much money as you need. Why wouldn't they want to spend the extra $300 million to own Tomb Raider? I know Tomb Raider might not be the most relevant right now, but and I mean that's just Tomb Raider. There's a list of other 49 other IP evidently that we don't know about yet. I feel like Sony would just want to be like, okay, let's take it all, because a big thing that most people aren't talking about is that hiring in the games industry right now is hard. It is hard to find talent to make games. Crystal Dynamics and Atlas Montreal might not be like the greatest devs ever. That is numbers, though. I don't know off the top of my head the actual employee count they have. But right now, getting like a new studio form is that's why the Initiative is having so much trouble making that new Perfect Dark game, which is funny because Crystal Dynamics is helping them make that Perfect Dark game. But I don't know. I feel like maybe Sony would have just been like, okay, well, we'll spend the extra $300 million. We'll get Tomb Raider and Deus Ex and this awesome slate of teams. Three teams, of course. Crystal Dynamics, I believe, is in Santa Monica, next to Santa Monica Studios. So, like, it kind of would have made sense, right? They could have had some synergy there. They could have been like, okay, well, if you want to go help on God of War, that's fine. If God of War people want to go help on, whatever Crystal Dynamics is working on, they could have done that. But maybe they didn't want to do it because of the tie with Perfect Dark. I don't know if that would affect it that much. But maybe they don't want to own a studio making an Xbox game. That's a fair criticism, or a fair point, maybe. But at the end of the day, you have to understand that Sony would want to buy Square Enix for Final Fantasy. That is why they would be buying it. Everything else is a bonus. And to kind of bring it into Nintendo, since I am a Nintendo channel for the most part, I just have to say, if Sony acquires Square Enix, I really, really hope they do what they did with Bungie and say, like, okay, we're still going to have these games come out on other platforms, because right now Square Enix is the Switch's biggest third-party supporter, bar none. We got stuff like Octopath Traveler, Triangle Strategy, Bravely Default, Live Alive is coming out later this year. We have Dragon Quest 11 and the remake of 3 coming out. Square Enix's support on the Switch has been awesome. Nintendo can lose that. They didn't have it for a while, but like that would really hurt. And I don't think, if I was Sony, I don't know if I'd want to lose that, because I don't know if a game like Triangle Strategy would sell 1 million on PlayStation. I think it's Team Asano and like Tokyo RPG Factory and all those like smaller devs they have working at Square Enix on these smaller like Switch scale games. They make sense for Switch. I don't know, like, yeah, you can put them on play. Like, obviously, yes, if they acquire Square Enix, all these games will come to PlayStation for the future, forever. Having them on Switch makes way too much sense, though. So I hope if Sony does acquire Square Enix, they would keep that. I'm not going to hold my breath, but hopefully if they acquire them, and they'd keep it as like a separate vertical like they're doing with Bungie. Bungie's still going to be publishing, Destiny 3 or whatever the hell happens with that. They're still going to be managing their own operations. Obviously, yes, at the end of the day, they're going to be answering to Herman Holst, but, vertical slice. And then Square Enix would be its own slice with, I don't know who the current president of Square Enix is in Japan, but it'd be that, right? So I do think, however, I think that's probably the next big one that's going to be announced. Just making kind of baseless predictions. I think my take is that they sold off those Western divisions because Sony, yeah, once again, it would make sense to just be like, okay, let's just get Tomb Raider. But also maybe they were looking at it critically and like, okay, we just care about the Japanese stuff. We care about that Final Fantasy. So I do think maybe this is like a management shakeup before a proper acquisition for Square Enix happens for all of it. And one thing too, I know everybody's saying this. Square Enix said they're sold off their Western stuff for blockchain tech and investments in that field. That means they're selling though. I don't think Sony would want to be doing any of that. So that's maybe another point kind of hampering the idea that maybe Sony's acquiring them. I don't know, man. I think just the fact that they're willing to sell Tomb Raider for that means they're not in a great place. I mean, even some of their Japanese stuff hasn't been doing great. We have Babylon's Fall reaching a concurrent 1 player on Steam last week, right? So, Square Enix isn't really in a great place. Final Fantasy XIV is really kind of carrying them right now in terms of like revenue, and I mean that game's doing incredibly well. So, yeah, I think Sony is the most like I don't think there's a chance in hell. Microsoft has no reason to buy Square Enix. Those games don't even matter to the Xbox. Obviously, yeah, I'm sure, like, if you're an Xbox fan, it'd be awesome if Final Fantasy 16 or 17 ended up being exclusive to Xbox. It's not going to happen. So, realistically speaking, I think Sony would be the most likely one to acquire Square Enix. I don't think Embracer is going to come in and buy the Japanese studios, because, once again, you have to think, Sony is a Japanese company. So, I think that one would make the most sense, especially with, like, you know, falling in with Japanese laws and everything, and it would just make the most sense. Let's talk about some other ones, though. I think there's, like 3 more that we want to talk about here. Capcom is the one I am terrified of. I am so scared of Capcom being bought. I do not want anybody to buy Capcom. Hopefully it doesn't happen. Right now, it seems like we're kind of in a good spot. I don't think, my voice is cracked. I don't think there's any writing on the wall for this one. But if someone's going to acquire them, it's going to be Sony. It's going to be Sony. Because Capcom has so much legacy with Sony. But once again, bringing it back to Nintendo, Capcom is a really big supporter of Nintendo. Monster Hunter, man. I know Monster Hunter has been on PlayStation and Xbox now, but Monster Hunter is a Nintendo franchise. Like, for a lot of people, yes, I know it started on PS2 and PSP, and I get that. For a lot of people, for the generation that grew up in the 2010s, Monster Hunter is Nintendo. Then, of course, you have, like, Mega Man, which is that might as well be a Nintendo franchise, right? Even stuff like Street Fighter. I know Street Fighter 5 and Street Fighter 6 will most likely be PlayStation exclusive. Big legacy there. Even Resident Evil, I mean, all those games are on Switch. And on Xbox, of course, too. The reason I'm not even really mentioning Microsoft in this conversation is I don't think Microsoft's going to be able to acquire any Japanese studio. Maybe Sega. I don't even want to talk about Sega, but probably not. I think Sega is just going to kind of vibe. Capcom, I'm scared of. On the one hand, like, yeah, it'd be cool. Capcom's IP is like split right in the middle for me. Half of it makes sense for Sony, half of it makes sense for Nintendo. Mega Man, Monster Hunter, Ace Attorney, all that stuff makes sense for Nintendo. But then Resident Evil, bro, that has to be on that. I mean, that's the big one for that's their biggest franchise. That has to be on Sony. You cannot make Resident Evil exclusive to anything but PlayStation. Obviously, ideally, yes, keep it on everything, and that's, you know, the dream right now. So unless Capcom's in a bad place, which I don't think they are, then we should be fine. But I don't know. When they're making games that look like Dino Crisis that aren't Dino Crisis, what is that game called? Extinction? Exo Primal? That game doesn't look good. So I don't know what's going on there. But yeah, Capcom, I think Capcom's safe for now, hopefully. And then a couple more big ones. Actually, here, let's talk about this one. Let's talk about Nintendo. If Nintendo were to acquire any big publisher, and this is not going to happen, but if they were, I've seen people throwing around like Konami IP should go to Nintendo. I mean, that'd be cool. Let's just talk about Konami real quick. If anybody's getting the Konami IP at Sony, I would like to see, I mean, here's like, Castlevania has a legacy with Nintendo and PlayStation. I don't want to see it go exclusively to either, but at the end of the day, Metal Gear Solid, so it would go to Sony. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think Konami's actually kind of coming back right now, so I think they'll be fine. I think they all those rumors are probably true. They're probably working with Sony on like a Metal Gear Solid remake and all that. Maybe not with Blue Point, but Virtuos or whatever. But let's talk about Nintendo, though. If they were ever to buy a company, and they're not going to do it, it would be Bandai Namco. Like, without a doubt. Bandai Namco, they work so closely with Bandai Namco on so many games. Of course, Bandai Namco made Smash Brothers. They made new Pokemon Snap. They make a ton of stuff. Pokken Tournament. Their support on a ton of games. Like, I can't think of much off the top of my head, but they do support for a lot of Nintendo games. They were originally making Metroid Prime 4, allegedly. That never got actually confirmed, but that was the rumor, right? So, Bandai Namco would make the most sense. The only reason I say there's no chance, well, one, Nintendo, or I should say, Shuntaro Furukawa, the president of Nintendo, has said they don't want to buy companies that don't make sense, or that they didn't kind of raise almost, which is what Sony was doing originally, to be fair, so things can change. But with the current with the current president of Nintendo, I don't think it's going to happen. However, maybe in a couple years, if he retires or something, they could do something, but he's pretty young, so I don't think that's going to happen. Bandai Namco would make sense, except big exception, the anime stuff. I think that kind of ties them out. That kind of locks them out. The anime stuff that Bandai Namco has, I don't think anybody wants that. I mean, yeah, everybody wants that. Anime games sell so well, it's like easily. I don't think you want to deal with that licensing, but maybe you do. I don't know. Maybe that's worth it. Maybe it's worth it having the Naruto and Dragon Ball IP for video games. Maybe I don't think Nintendo would go for that. I think Nintendo would just want it for, you know, Pac-Man and the actual development teams working on their own Nintendo games. In terms of like Bandai Namco IP, though, there's not much. You have Tales of, I mean, it's primarily associated with PlayStation, but I could see that making sense on Nintendo more so in the future if they decided to go that route. Of course, Tales of Arise wasn't on Nintendo Switch, but that one could fit. And then, I mean, like, what else do they have? They have Klonoa, right? That's a Nintendo series. I know it's on PS1, but that I think most people associate Klonoa with Nintendo. And then, of course, they don't own this company or this developer, but Bandai Namco also heavily works with From Software. So I don't know the exact legality of how it all kind of evens out here. I'm pretty sure Bandai Namco owns Dark Souls. I don't think they own Elden Ring. I don't think. Maybe correct me in the comments. Whoever owns Elden Ring is on top right now. If From Software actually owns that IP, no one's... I don't know, man. It's something. I guess let's just kind of segue into this conversation. From Software, once again, if anyone were to buy them, I think Sony makes the most sense. And I feel like this whole video is just me saying, yeah, Sony makes the most sense. That's because most of the companies left are Japanese companies. Microsoft's already bought all the big Western companies, and I don't really see Microsoft buying any Japanese companies. Maybe Sega, maybe, but I don't really think that's going to happen anytime soon. So yeah, From Software is a tricky one. I don't think anybody's going to buy them. They have all the power in the world. They are king shit right now. No one can touch From Software. So that would have to exclusively be if like Sony or Microsoft or whoever came to Miyazaki and the team at From Software and was like, look, we're going to give you billions of dollars. Do whatever you want, please, because people clearly resonate with your games. I don't know if that's going to happen. I think having Elden Ring 2 on every platform or whatever From Software does next, that's the best case scenario, but we'll see. If I was Sony, certainly I'd be like, okay, that'd be nice to own. That'd be really nice to own right now, the most critically acclaimed developer of the modern age. But I don't really think that's going to happen. Moral of the story is Square Enix and Ubisoft, I think, are the two main ones to go. I probably missed some. I don't think, like Koei Tecmo, they're fine. They're not going to... Nah. That's another one that maybe Nintendo could be kind of interested in. They do a lot of stuff with them with the Warriors games, but I don't really think so. And then I'm sure there's other smaller devs, but I think I covered most of the big ones. Sega, once again, I don't... Is there much appeal? If someone were gonna buy Sega, I guess we can just talk about it. If someone were gonna buy Sega, I assume it'd be Microsoft, because that would be like, okay, let's get our foot into the Japanese door, guys. Which, to be fair, they've been kind of doing with Sega with like Yakuza's on Game Pass and all that. So out of all Japanese developers, they make the most sense for Microsoft. Sony, people say Sony because Persona. If like Sega was in a really bad place, what I could see happening is they could sell Atlas to Sony, maybe. Although at that point, maybe that won't even make sense for Nintendo. I don't know. It's way too early to speculate on stuff like that. We got to focus on the here and now. Obviously, Square Enix and Ubisoft are next up, and then maybe any smaller devs. So, I don't know. This is a fun video. I just wanted to kind of ramble about the current like state of acquisitions and just everything happening in the industry. It's a scary thing, seeing all these mega corporations being formed, but also there are positives. Someone commented on my video like, hey, this means those people are being fed. They get their jobs. You know, this is job security. That's true. It is good for that reason. Other reasons, though, I mean, not to use this word, I try not to use it in this whole video, but monopoly. I mean, no, I don't think... People are saying Microsoft has a monopoly. No, they don't. If anybody currently has a monopoly, it's Embracer. They have like 160 teams or something crazy like that. So if anyone has a monopoly, it's them, but I don't think even they have a monopoly. So, there you guys have it. I just wanted to ramble about this. Let me know your thoughts on the current gaming landscape with all these gaming acquisitions going on. Who do you think is up next? And I want to emphasize here before we end off, I don't want anything to be bought unless it's a case where like they're about to lose all their jobs, you know. And that's the case, and sure. Otherwise, Sony and Nintendo bias aside, I don't want anybody being bought because it means less places for people to play these games. I like Call of Duty. If Call of Duty isn't on PlayStation in the future, I'm going to be so upset. You know, I like Elden Ring. If Elden Ring isn't on Xbox, that would suck. You know, Elden Ring 2. So I don't want anything to be exclusive. The best case scenario is that everything's on everything, but we don't live in that dream world. So there you guys have it. Let me know what you think. Of course, you can subscribe here for more, usually 3DS and Wii U and Switch content, but whenever there's, you know, something in my brain storming up about the gaming industry, I will talk about it because I've been itching. I've been itching this whole week to talk about more acquisition stuff. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at BoTalksMedia. Join my Discord. The link to that is in the description down below. And until next time, guys, bye-bye.